What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. Today's guests are a duo of designers who are bringing a fresh eye to interior design. While recently formed, their studio has quickly garnered some cult-like status. Through innovative design, they're making a global impact on the world of luxury hospitality. They are partners at Watts and Dre. Ladies and gentlemen, Vanessa Watts and Erica Dre. Welcome, ladies.
Hi.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
Okay, so I think we're doing this recording on the premise that I love entrepreneurs, and being an entrepreneur is hard. I looked up some stats, and I just want to share with everyone that 90% of startups fail. Out of those, 10% don't make it past their first year. You guys have been around for 2 years. You're working on some pretty cool projects. You've made it through the gauntlet, so to speak. And so I want to talk a lot about that because Erica, you come from fashion. Vanessa, you come from design, and you kind of merged together and created this really cool, passionate company. And I really respect that. Oh, and the stats, as for everyone listening, it's even lower for women-owned businesses. So let's just take a moment to celebrate. Round of applause. So congratulations. It's like an incredible feat. And I think also by virtue of having you two on, I like impacting other people and shortening other people's journeys, like I say in the beginning of the thing, which it really lights me up. And when I think about success over my career, it used to be like monetary or, how much revenue the business is doing or profit or whatever. But to me, it's like, it's impact and how I impact others. So I want everyone who's listening to just listen, and it's possible and it's hard and you got to keep going. And we're going to talk about that experience in a minute. So before we get into it, because of the title of the podcast, Defining Hospitality, and we'll start with Erica, who comes from a fashion background. How do you define hospitality, and what do you feel about hospitality?
Well, for me, I think it's the attentiveness, it's the consideration. I think it's people being genuine in their actions. Overall, I really love human connection. So I think that a simple smile goes a really, really long way. And I don't think it necessarily has to come from the people who are formally trained. You can walk into a five-star luxury hotel and expect it. However, getting it from your neighborhood bodega is just as important, right? It's this human connection, this interaction that you're having with people in your community as well. And I think it almost is even more important at that when you receive that level of, kindness, because it may not necessarily be expected, right? When you go into these luxury hotels or these higher end restaurants and establishments, they have been formally trained to behave that way. Is it genuine? Is it not genuine? Sometimes you can tell. I feel like I am very empathetic. And so I feel people's energy very easily. And so you can genuinely tell when it almost becomes rote for these people. They're just doing it because they're sort of on autopilot. So when you go to an establishment that may not have that level of formal training and you receive that level of kindness, it feels all the more warmer. I'm a people person. I love people. I love talking to people. I look at strangers as, friends I haven't met yet. I just, I like interaction. I like hearing people's stories. I mean, I think, humans and their stories are really interesting, right? They're really interesting to sort of find out their backgrounds and why they've made the decisions that they've made, et cetera.
Yeah, I appreciate how, okay, I get it on the formally trained side, so that's awesome. But I agree with you in that the sense when you have that surprise experience of hospitality and caring, um, it's that much more wholesome and appreciated for me and you. And now let's switch over to Vanessa. Vanessa, how about you? What does hospitality mean to you?
To me, I think hospitality is kind of like non-judgmental graciousness. I think we had a long time. I mean, in this country, it's the history of the country, honestly. But we had a long time in nightlife and hospitality and things like that very recently, where the hospitality was kind of defined as a in or out sort of thing. Like there was the velvet rope at the clubs, and you would get selected or not. Um, and that's leaving out, I don't know how much of the population, but to me, I feel like the future is not that idea. We're all embracing each other. People are getting wiser when it comes to, like our differences are much less than our similarities. So to me, when you can get this kind of like love and welcoming from an establishment, be it a hotel or the bodega or, the train conductor this morning, I had this really lovely train conductor on the subway, like say good morning. It's like, what? You're driving the subway. Like this is above and beyond. But this idea of extending that to everyone kind of equally, or extending it to anyone without considering who they are first, to me, that's real hospitality. Like the idea that we're not that different. We're all the same, and we're all equally deserving of good treatment. And yeah, I think it's something like that. Like if we could all receive good hospitality, I feel like the world would be a better place. Like if everyone could be experience that thing that you get in the 5-star hotel. Honestly, we actually just were in a hotel the other day where we had this incredible hospitality experience from the general manager. She held the elevator door for everyone. I mean, it was just an absurd number of people coming and going in this one rickety elevator that wasn't working very well, and it was really hot. And she was so polite to every single person, regardless. And some people were cool about it. Some people were like, I'm angry. It's hot. It's New York. We're in this slow elevator. But it didn't faze her at all. She gave everyone equal, really kind, lovely treatment. And I feel like when you experience that, it really bowls you over. You're like, oh, wow, this is a wonderful feeling. And if everybody could get that, if we could give that to each other in all environments, I feel like we would be in a much better place.
Thank you. Okay, now I want to shift back to kind of what we were talking about at the beginning as far as the entrepreneurial journey. So both of you had different lives. Well, but you've known each other for a very long time. So that's pretty cool. And that can work well or not work well, depending, because sometimes partnerships are formed with someone who you know really, really well, but you're not really clear on roles, responsibilities, and vision. So you've known each other for a long time, and I'm sure you spoke about forming a business together over the years, but walk us through like the origin story of Watts and Trey. Like, how did you get up the courage to take that first step together?
We're laughing. You're not going to believe this.
So it was a psychic.
Get out of here.
I have been for many years looking to pivot out of my career. And, I knew that I didn't want to do fashion anymore. It was really monotonous. It was getting pretty cyclical. And I just couldn't land on what it was that I wanted to do. I was also making jewelry on the side, which, is very challenging to try to make a paycheck off of your art unless you have the opportunity to fully devote yourself to it, which I just did it, So, the pandemic hit, and I think that was sort of like a coming to whoever you pray to moment for everybody. And, now is your opportunity, to really contemplate like what's next. So initially I started going to grad school for nutrition, and I thought that I was going to be a nutritionist. And then that quickly panned into me being extremely bored with that. And I realized that, what I needed, what I was really desperate for, was something that was more challenging and piqued my interest every day. And obviously this industry, there are no 2 days that are alike. So actually a mutual friend of Vanessa and I's, he and I had been having a conversation, and he said, I think you should speak to this psychic that I spoke to. And so I 100% am a person that lives in the gray. I don't believe in the black and white. I believe in being open to anything. So I said, okay, you know what? I'm just going to give it a go.
Hold on. Before you get into what she says, you got to set the stage. Where is she? What's her name if you feel comfortable sharing? And like, are you walking into crystals and rainbows and like,
No, she's located in Atlanta, Georgia. So it was a phone conversation. Her name is Boo, right? Her name is Boo. She is such a lovely human being. And, you know, one of the reasons I think that I was also interested in speaking to her is our mutual friend said, as I've seen my life unfold, everything that she said to me keeps unfolding. And so when I spoke to her, you know, I get on the phone with her and I'm just open to hear. And that's my first question. What am I supposed to be doing? Because I know I'm not supposed to be doing this. And I just did this whole, you know, crash course for 3 months in nutrition where I was studying 12 hours a day while at the same time still working. And I'm a single parent, and parenting. And so she was like, no, that's not for you. But what I do think is for you is interior design. And my initial reaction was, no, I don't know about that. That's never been something that's ever crossed my mind. You're supposed to tell me that I'm going to go make jewelry because that's what I want to do. She doesn't, you know, that's great. You know, I understand that, but I really do think that interior design is the thing that's going to be for you. And I said, but I wouldn't even know how to start this. Do you go back to school? Like, where do you even begin? I said, I feel so apathetic right now. And she goes, well, that's okay. Rest now, because in 2 months, your life is entirely going to change. And so I get off the phone and I'm like completely dejected because that's not what I had wanted to hear. And I mean, it actually took me a few weeks to even call Vanessa to say, what do I do now? And Vanessa she's like, I'm drowning.
I was really not the right person to call, honestly.
At the time, I think at the time, right? Like at that particular moment in your life, it was maybe not. Yeah.
Yeah, my reaction was very bad. I was like, this is crazy. You're crazy. You can't base your life on a psychic, first of all. I'm not living in the gray. I am very black and white. I'm a total non-believer in all things almost, right? And I'm like, this is ridiculous. You can't do this. You need to think rationally. What are you talking about? And, you know, also at the time, I was the creative director at Mike Sumi's studio, Sumi Design Works, which was still a startup, right? He was still in startup phase. And we had so much work and it was these really cool, powerful projects.
please tell me you called Boo.
No, me? No.
Have you spoken to Boo yet either?
No. Like I can't mess with witchy people, man. Like I am afraid of this stuff. Like I'm trying to stay on the right side of that. But yeah, so Mike Sumi had all this great work. And we were around the clock. I mean, we were jamming like 16-hour days and things, 10-hour days, because he was still in startup mode. He was building his staff and it was intense. And I was like sometimes working weekends and things like this. And so Erica calls me in the middle of this and she's like, I think I want to change my career. And I'm like, girl, you can't, how are you going to do this? Like you have a 20-year fashion design career. And if you merge into interior design now, you know, like I was thinking back on my career, it's like I went to grad school for interior design and then I was an intern for like, I don't know how long, like it was a grueling process, and then a junior designer and then an intermediate designer, whatever that even is. And it's like, it took me a long time to get to where I was. And what I thought was like, oh, but you're already where I am in your career. So why would you switch tracks and be in a new career where they'll put you back where I was or where you were? I mean, you were an intern in fashion and things like that too, right? Like it would be rewinding the clock 20 years and having to like fold fabric in the library or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I reacted pretty bad.
So then how did you guys bridge that gap and get to where you are now, surviving the 2-year gauntlet of startup phase and even harder 2-year gauntlet as female entrepreneurs?
Well, the interesting thing, the sort of like wrap up to the story as to like why we started this business So after I got off the phone with Vanessa, and she's now just basically like told me this is the worst idea ever. Now I'm like, what do I do? Because I've exhausted everything. I have no idea what my next step is. I just go back to work. I'm still the same sort of, robot. And Vanessa calls me a couple weeks later, and she leaves me sort of this mysterious voicemail. And I call her back, and she says, a gentleman has called me from San Diego, and he would like me personally to design his nightclub. Would you do this with me? And I was like, oh my God, absolutely. This sounds super exciting. Yes. I'm like, I'll be your little intern. I'll get all, I'll do it. And she goes, no, 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 no. No, like we're actually going to design it together. And I was like, okay, this is great. So I realized that, and we were still going to, keep our full-time jobs. And she said, keep in mind, we have to devote our nights, our weekends to this project to see it through. And at the same time, I'm also learning, right? So, it was more of my time. And I get off the phone with her and I realize that at that moment, it was exactly 2 months within one day that Boo said your life was going to completely change. Like I had spoken to Boo probably the one day after. So within 2 months, this happened. And it was full steam ahead because we started the project immediately. So if that wasn't a bigger sign, I don't really know what was, right? So you kind of put your hands up and go, okay, I think somebody's trying to tell me something. And so we worked on this really incredible project, and we realized we worked really well together. And, this was at a point, I think, in Vanessa's career that she was looking to, establish her own studio.
Not really. No, not really. No. I was a creative director. Like, I was like, this is what I went to grad school for. I had a 10-year plan. I was going to work in 3 major studios in New York City, and I was going to end as a creative director and be a boss, right? I was like where I wanted to be. And I'd done it. I worked at Rockwell. I worked at iCrave. I worked at Stonehill. And then I got the creative director role with Mike Sumi, which was like the honor of my professional career. And I had no interest in starting my own studio. But the weird thing is designing for other studios is designing to the needs and wants of the other studios. And of course the clients, right? You're always designing to the client, right? But then there's this background thing that comes from internally, the place you're working, like they have priorities, right? And it had never occurred to me because at that point in my career, now I've been an interior designer, I don't know, like 14 years, now 14 years, so maybe like 10 years, I don't know, whatever, a long time. So at that point in my career, I had never designed anything on my own. It had always been through a studio for studio clients, and no one had ever asked me to design anything on my own. And I have some pretty wild ideas about what I think the world should look like. Erica insanely agrees with me on a lot of them, but for the most part, I've been a bit censored throughout my career because no one else agrees with my crazy ideas. But this project almost didn't, I don't want to say it didn't matter. Of course it mattered. We wanted to do a great job. But in terms of like this kind of like self-centered censorship that I've learned to adapt to in my career in the New York studios, I didn't have to do that. I was like, I think this whole wall should be hot pink and let's make the ceiling gold. And why don't we put drippy diamonds on everything? And there's nobody in between me and the client and, Erica working with me to say, that's ridiculous. You can't do that. Like, I own the studio, or I'm your director, or I'm your senior designer, or whatever it is. No, there was no editor. And it was wild. We did crazy, crazy stuff in this club, and it all came out of our heads. And our client was awesome because he was like, I love it. I agree. Let's do more of this. Which is great. And it turns out that I think that I've always had this aesthetic, like that became addictive, right? Like, because I've always had this aesthetic that like I've tempered for the hospitality design studios that I've worked for, which is not to say anything against them. Like they're all great, like they've all been totally wonderful to me. My career was incredible, I guess. I don't know. It still is, maybe. But my career in the studios in New York has been incredible. Everybody's been wonderful and very respectful. But the fact of the matter is, like, when you're designing a hotel, it's, somebody's $25 million, and this thing has to have return on investment, and it has to like suit a series of needs. And there's a number of people in between that equation, making sure that works. But when you run the studio, you can kind of make those decisions on your own. And it turns out like I'm a much riskier taking designer as working on my own as I had ever been in a studio, which is awesome. And Erica does not care because she's come from a whole other industry. So she's like, yo, I think fire is a great idea here.
Fire is fire.
Yeah. So it's kind of a lot of fun because so that became addictive. And then one day she called me on the phone and said, hey, I have to tell you something. This was we're like 3 months into this nightclub design project, which if you know anything about nightclub design projects, it's kind of the end, right? She calls me on the phone and she's like, hey, I want to tell you, I just quit my job. And I was like, girl, what's your new job? And she was like, oh, I'm designing this nightclub with you. And I was like, no, that's not how this works. It's going to be done soon. What are you going to do next? And she was like, we'll get another nightclub. And I was like, wait, do you think we can do that? Like, I assumed this would only be once in my lifetime that some client would say, yes, put gold drippy chains, fire mania everywhere. And we have no problem with that. And we'll pay you to do it. But Erica thought we could do it again. And so I went crazy and quit my job.
Again, like that's bold in so many different ways of just doing the nightclub. Erica, you quitting your job and just saying, nope, we're doing this together. We're going to find another one. And I don't remember if it was Vanessa or Erica that said that you agreed on a lot of the things together, whether it's design choices or starting a business choices. But so much of a successful partnership comes from what happens when you don't agree on the thing. So like if you're 80% agreeing on stuff, the real magic and how you manage and break through those 20% of disagreements on design choices to business to just running a business. If you make a spectrum, like from black to white or gray or fire, orange to red, how as nascent partners, or what framework do you have to dive into those differences to, keep the machine going and making it past the death gate when most businesses start?
I think we both came into owning a business on the same level, right? So really it wasn't about our differences. It was about us learning together, right? We had to take the ups and downs of the things that were coming at us, the things that we could not anticipate, and almost hold each other's hand and go, right? We'll figure it out together, right? We've kind of like walked down every road together. Design, we are almost like 99% on the same level with everything. And we both feed into each other's crazy. She has an idea, I have an idea. We keep topping our ideas together. And there's so many times where we know exactly what the other person is going to choose out of something. You have vendors come all the time and they're showing you, anything from wall covering to fabric to finishes. And we are always usually picking almost the exact same things, right? So we really do walk a path that way together. And we've never had a fight. We just are always trying to figure it out together. I think, we are also going at such a fast pace that we really don't have time for a disagreement. It's just, okay, this happened. Let's figure out how we can pivot, move on, what needs to be done, right? Because at the end of the day, we're still running a business that we intend to be incredibly successful and with longevity, right? So we really haven't run into an issue where, she's in one corner and I'm in another corner and we can't come to some agreement together.
I think I know why. I think the reason we can solve our disagreements well is because we're both really delicate around each other's, like respectful. Because I think we both grew up in kind of like crazy parent households. And it's like, we're both the kids from the crazy parent household where you're like my family is a bunch of artists. Everybody was raving lunatic. And my sister's a stand-up comedian and they're all like just doing a show all the time and everything's so passionate. But yeah, we both grew up in these kind of like crazy, Erica had a similar thing, like, creatives and like wild family life. And when you're like, I was the youngest in my situation by many years. I was 10 years younger than everybody else around me, the next oldest person. And so I was always the person that had to kind of like tiptoe and figure out a way to not like upset the balance in order to get what I needed to get and get through it, because everybody was nuts. And I think, Erica, your upbringing was very similar. And so that forms a personality type that's like really good at solving disputes, I think. I mean, maybe not really good, but like we've got a way of doing it. And it's a similar way. And it's like about being respectful of the other person's thing, whatever it might be. And like walking into it delicately rather than bowling over and saying like, no, this is it. Actually, I do that sometimes. I'm an Aries, but you know, only on dumb stuff. Like on the serious stuff, yeah, like we have to kind of like debate club it ish a little bit. Like, okay, here's what I think. Here's what you think. Here's what I think. Here's what you think. And like this, that, and yeah, you know what I mean?
I mean, we're a support system to one another, right? We're in a partnership. So at the end of the day, you can't be a raving lunatic screaming at each other about something. You just have to come to the table and have some level of compromise and discussion, right? So, you know, like we are here to support one another, and we're here to support our business and the people who work for us. And for me, I'm just like, I don't need to be argumentative. I can have a conversation like an adult about something and say, well, I don't think that's the best way to do it, but like, let's hear your side and how can we, you know, come to the same side. So, you know, we've been really successful in, to Vanessa's point, the reverence we have for one another.
Let's go back. So when did you start the company? 2 years. Okay.
Ago.
So let's go back 2 years and 2 months ago to when you first talked to Boo in Atlanta. She's in Atlanta, right? You said Atlanta? Okay. So
yes.
Let's pretend it's 2 years, 2 months ago. And let's also pretend that it wasn't just Erica, but it was also Vanessa on the phone with Boo. And Boo said, you're going to start this business and you're going to be an interior design. You're going to start an interior design company. And let's say you just went full hook, line, and sinker and started the next day. What would you do? What would you have done differently?
That's a good question. I think like number one would be 2-factor authentication on our email accounts. We've been robbed by hackers about 6 times now. So dear people of the world, 2-factor authentication on your email account. It's really crazy what is going on in the digital world right now. And everything we do is digital, right? It's like we rely heavily on email and the Microsoft Calendar. And, you know, like we're sending emails with the word invoice in the subject line. Like, I don't think I would ever do that again if, if I could choose. Yeah, like digital security cannot be understated, but I don't know. That's just one small thing. I think maybe the bigger thing would be to kind of think through, and we've now done it, and we've basically like paid for ourselves to do it, and we've kind of learned all the things in the hard way. But it would have been nice in the beginning to think about, where does money come from, and how do we ensure that it's going to show up?
The Federal Reserve just prints it. That's all it.
Yeah, exactly.
Turns out there's a few steps in between. So yeah, Fed prints it, and then people borrow it, and then they build hotels with it. And as a consultant to the process of building a hotel or building a nightclub, we are beholden to those long terms and the lender and the borrower and many, many steps. And so all of that comes with a big, long timeline that you wouldn't expect, right? So the one thing that has really been the most surprising is like, okay, we got a job. Yay, we got this job. Like, let's do this thing right now. And because the money from the job is coming, but the money from the job doesn't come immediately. It's like 90 days later or 60 days later, right? So cash flow is a crazy thing. And I wish we'd understood more about it. And but it's fine. We've learned. But if we could do it again, like think on who is our ideal client, because we've spent a lot. I think I did some math on it recently. It's gotten to the point where it's costing us something like 20 grand for every client we've landed. like in reality, in having paid for all the marketing and like lunches and meetings and airplanes to meet all of the folks that we've met versus who's hired us, right? And so what we were doing in the beginning was spreading a very wide net. We hadn't, and this is, I mean, I think this is probably what you learned in like business development 101 or something, which neither of us took.
Well, I will say at the start of any business, there's a tremendous investment in time and customer acquisition costs to land that first customer, so to speak. And as much whether you're good at business or have an MBA or not, like oftentimes from my experience, you start a business with one idea and it just especially in that first year or two, you got to really keep adapting and changing until you find it because it's like it's like you're William Tell trying to shoot that arrow and land it in that apple. And, you don't want to hit the kid in the face on the way. But if I were to switch over to Erica talking about it, like if you could go back 2 years and 2 months ago to that boo and you started it the next day, what would you change or do differently?
I mean, in agreement with Vanessa, I think better planning, right? We sort of took the leap, we jumped, we're still falling. It's a super fun fall. I mean, I love it. I think it's really exciting. At first, there was a lot, like I had so much anxiety about it. And I think that, yes, I would have. I'm a research person. And this is one of the interesting things I just didn't research. Like, what do you do when you start a business? Like, all I knew is like, you have to open up an LLC and you have to like legitimize. And I was like, I can do this. Like, let's get this paperwork going, but really truly understanding properly how to develop a business, right? And to Vanessa's point, how to keep the money flowing in and not just keeping the money flowing in, what to do with it. The smartest thing that we did for our business was we hired a fractional CFO. I mean, who could take those numbers and say, you can spend the money on this, you can spend the money on this, you can't spend the money on this. Because we were just spending the money. And we were like, well, this is fine because more money is going to come in, and I think that there was a lot of things that we didn't anticipate, right? There are so many licenses you have to get to practice in certain states. That all costs money. There is insurance that costs money. There's so many things, there's so many elements to a business. And I don't think that we had really taken that into consideration. So I think I would have done a hard study on how does this even begin.
I'll also push back on you there. Like I appreciate all of that, but at the same time, you're bringing in these fresh perspectives and rookie smarts, and its passion is like pushing you to solve everything. But so to everyone listening who's debating, yeah, it's important to think about all that stuff. But I also wouldn't let that be such a roadblock because if it was 3 years into the future before you did it, like that's a lot of life and a lot of missed opportunity that you could have missed, right? It's you're in a way, you're building the airplane as it's taking off, right?
Yeah. I mean, and we had to fall on our faces a lot, right? We had to make mistakes to learn to not do it again. So, when you think back and you say, it's like parenting. People want to read 1 million books about having a baby and how to do it. And there's no right way to do it. Like, I didn't read anything. I was like, this baby's going to come out and I'm going to figure it out. We're going to wing it here. You know what I mean? And I think, thus far he's 10, he's made it to 10. He's super successful. He loves reading and doing math, like score, that is a success in my mind. Right. So I think it was kind of the same thing. It's like, yes, we could have read all the books and I could have done more research and I could have looked more into it, but then we had made these mistakes that really we're like, well, we're never going to do that again. You've really you have to fall on your face to learn.
I think I have this saying that I should have a sign up over my desk because I get stuck sometimes as an entrepreneur or husband or dad with trying to come up with the perfect solution, right? And often I find that perfect is the enemy of just good, right? And it becomes a huge roadblock. And as you're talking about the falling, it reminds me of this song. I don't, was it Crazy Heart with Jeff Bridges? Was that like the country western thing? But he had this song. It's like falling and flying, and the lyric is, "It's funny how falling feels like flying for a little while."
Yeah, it does, right?
Oh my God. Dan Ryan, what are you saying? No, we're not going to fall. I mean, we're going to fly.
No, we're gonna fly.
The point is, you wouldn't have taken that first step if you didn't have that feeling of flight, right? And so much about life and business and just everything is fighting entropy and just taking that next step and find, and you have the vision and the plan, or you have the vision, maybe you don't have the plan, but you have the passion to forge a path in that direction. I don't know. I also saw a t-shirt once that really stuck with me as well. I love getting all my philosophy from t-shirts, where it's failure is just unfinished learning, right? So it's how do we have the mindset to hit these roadblocks and speed bumps, come close to hitting the ground or hitting the ground, and take that as an opportunity or as an expensive learning, or as like your PhD in what's next. So okay, so looking back, I appreciate that, because it is scary, and sometimes also it's not good to know how scary it is, right? Because that would just discourage all of us from trying and starting. And to me, starting a business and being an entrepreneur is like the ultimate form of creativity as well, because it's like there's no path, you're creating a path, and you're finding the people to help get to the next step. And then the other thing is once you get to the top of the hill, you're never at the top of the hill. So going back to Vanessa, you saying, oh, you wanted to work at 3 firms and be a creative director, there's always the next hill. And then now you have this company and you're doing well, like there's always the next hill. So, and then I'll ask you, as you look forward, what's that next hill? What's exciting you most about what you're seeing out there?
I'm glad you asked. Because now we do have a plan. We went into this with no plan, and now we've got a rock solid plan. So the goal is to work on really special projects. Like, for example, there's a project right now who I'm just stalking after. There's some folks who have figured out how to build a hotel in low Earth orbit. So you have to take a space shuttle to go and stay in this hotel. And I am convinced that we must be involved in the design of this project. I mean, it's just insane and amazing and crazy. And so that's a big goal. We really, really, really want to work on the Luxor.
Oh, it needs a lot of help.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It's like, it is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're pursuing lots of work in Las Vegas because of things like that.
Yeah. And they're not scared of fire.
And they're not scared of fire. Yeah. And so we're pursuing work in low Earth orbit, hopefully in outer space eventually when we get there. Mars would be great. So Asia would be fantastic. We're really actively trying to pursue some work in Asia, because the appetite in cities like Shanghai for crazy, spectacular design is so much greater than a lot of what we get to see in the US. I think that we've got, places here. There's pockets in this country where they really are interested in wild design. Nightclubs are, for us, a great niche, because nightclubs always have to have that kind of like wow factor or that awe moment. So I think that the thing in the short run, in the next, 5-10 years, is to find these kinds of very special projects. And then on the sideline, Erica and I don't know if you know this about interior design. I'm sure you do. You do.
I bet you I don't. I know nothing about interior design.
No, but so when we design, for example, a hotel, typically we design somewhere between 200 and 300 pieces of custom furniture specifically to that hotel, that are only used one time. That design suits the concept to the hotel. Same deal, restaurants and nightclubs. It's not, the volume isn't as great, but we design lots and lots of custom furniture. And that's really the main trick of the trade here in hospitality design, is like we do architectural, like interior architecture and that kind of work, and palettes and finishes and changes to interior architecture. But our real thing is designing tons and tons of furniture. And it's always been a challenge to me to think that intellectual property comes and goes, right? It's like we just keep producing. And I think there's lots of designers out there that, they figure out their thing, right? And they become very well known for it, and can retailize it. There's a word there, but I don't know it. And so that's what we're working on now, because we designed this crazy furniture for all of these projects. For instance, we're working on the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas and designed this incredible furniture for this project that we want to keep using, right? And so it's stuff that we designed, and so now we're figuring out how to get it made in a small scale.
Kind of a direct to consumer situation.
Yeah, like you could have it in your dining room. Dining room chairs from our crazy heads and our wild projects, or like little coffee tables and things like that. So we're developing a furniture line, and that's the end goal of this company. I think would be to become half product, half project sort of thing, because the projects are, in my estimation, and I could be totally wrong about this, I have no idea, but what I think over the last 14 years of doing project-based work is that it can get to the point where if you're running a studio large enough to support the projects that you're taking without anything but project fee-based work, you can have to take projects that you're not necessarily right for, in order to keep the lights on and keep the wheels churning. And so what we want to try to do is figure a way to take the projects that we're right for, build this company so that it works to just take the work that we're intended for and that's intended for us, and then have another sideline hustle where there's money coming in the door, and we don't have to say okay, let's take this project that isn't necessarily, we're not the best pick for, and we wouldn't be the best choice for the owner, in order to keep our lights on. We don't want to get to that point of compromise if we can avoid it. And at the moment, we can just make wishes because we're small enough, and our overhead is low enough. So maybe we can turn our wish into reality.
And Erica, how about you?
I mean, I think Vanessa nailed it, right? Because we, didn't have a plan at first. And we sat down and really seriously thought about it when we started getting more clients. And this became, not just sort of a capricious minute where we decided to form a company. It was, well, where do we see this business and ourselves? And for me, I've always been a maker. I like using my hands. I like working with my hands. And so I think for us, a natural pivot to furniture is a really interesting thing. I can sit there and take clay and make a little thing out of clay. And it's really fun to then say, okay, well, what do we think about this thing? And how can we make it different? And, a lot of this job is really super creative, but you're also sitting at your computer for a solid amount of the day. Emails are a lot of your entire life. Creating decks are a lot of your entire life. But getting to do something tangible, we just recently got the opportunity to go see some of our pieces at a factory level. And that's really awesome, is to get out there and see things that are being built off of the things that came out of our heads. And so I like this idea of having this opportunity to also, have all of this design work happening, to Vanessa's point, within the projects that we really feel truly right for, and also being able to make things, it's like being able to make stuff that we can put our names on, because, it gets put into a project and everybody just knows the project. No one is maybe necessarily taking the pieces that are within the project into consideration. And we also feel that creating a line that's also accessible, right? We're not looking to create pieces that are so inaccessible and so inexpensive that somebody, who wants to purchase a special piece for their home
has to take out a mortgage.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Right. So, that's also our goal in being able to create pieces that your normal everyday people can purchase, right? We know all the go-to companies for furniture. They're dominating the market, right? And so we want a piece of that market. We want to also get in there and we want to make something that's really interesting as well, that's not going to cost you an arm and a leg.
Now, if you so for the success that you've had since starting and where you are now and what you've learned and are continuing to learn, if there was a listener out there, and there are a lot of them, but if what would you say to them if they are thinking about taking that first entrepreneurial step?
Do it. Do it and figure it out. I mean, I think that's Vanessa and I want to see our business become successful. So we are incredibly dedicated to that, right? That comes out in our work. We do not allow anything that goes out the door that we don't feel has our stamp of approval. We would rather stay all night long to deliver our deadline and get it right before we're going to let it out the door. But I think that it's all scary. Like, it's just going to be scary, right? Like, every book that you read about people who have started businesses are like, you have to love problems. You have to be somebody who is a problem solver, right? That's every single day. Every day there's a fire.
Vanessa, what about you? What would you say to someone who's debating whether or not to fall and fly?
It's funny. We were just talking to a friend about this, and he having this exact conversation, and he was like, "I want to do this, and I don't know when." And I said the same thing Erica did. I was like, "Just do it, man." It's almost like it's like investing. It's like the earlier you can do it, the better, right? Because the returns compound. But I would say get the 2-factor authentication on your email.
And the fractional CFO. Get the fractional CFO.
Get the fractional CFO. Word up, you Lim. We will introduce anybody who wants to meet her. She's accepting new clients.
So what I would also say to any entrepreneurs that are out there thinking is the fractional way. Like, you think about, oh, I need this many full-time employees. I would just say, like, do you really? And it's the from a fractional sales manager to a fractional CFO to a fractional marketing expert or fractional anything. We all know what we're best at. And the more time we spend doing things that we are not good at or do not enjoy, it's harder on the business. And to be able to build a fractional team, especially in the early stages, and even if you have a company that's already up and running, bringing them in for just an outside opinion for an hourly rate and not a salary, and benefits and everything else, it's a great way to be scrappy. And that market has just grown exponentially, in my opinion, over the past few years, from something as anonymous as Fiverr or Upwork to the CFO you mentioned, and many, many more. There are people out there. I met a woman at Independent Lodging Congress, and she runs a fractional CFO company. So she just like has a whole catalog of CFOs in all different parts, and she'll point and click them into different areas. So just know that if there's a challenge and you don't have the right person, you can find the right person even for a little bit to help you figure it out.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you brought that up, because I always assumed that interior design is really labor heavy, especially in hospitality. Like, this is a laborious thing because our projects can last 2, 3, 4 years. So ideally you want to keep your team 2, 3, 4 years, because you want your team to follow your client through the full extent of the project. And for that reason, interestingly, I think our industry is one of the last to sort of get this freelance culture. Like, my husband, for instance, is an art director for television design, right? So he designs graphics on television, and they've always been freelancers. Like, his colleagues and he they don't stay in studios. They go to a studio for 2 months, work on a project, go to another studio for 2 months. Whereas in my industry, in interior design, for us, it's always been, you have to have a job because our projects are so long. But I think you're right about this, Dan. Like, we've now figured out how to even do this kind of work, interior design, long-term project work with freelancers, like on a freelance basis. Our very first major project in this studio, we couldn't have pulled off without 3 of my best friends who I've been working with in this industry for years, who were like, yeah, we'll help you on exactly how Erica and I did our first project. We'll help you on nights and weekends and just pay us hourly. And, we had a design director that's like nights and weekends person. working part-time, which is an incredible thing because that's a really expensive salary in a studio. That's like $150,000 person. So for us to have in year one hired $150,000 person, I mean, that would be it. Like, it's like we don't get any other people. We don't get a studio. We don't get computers. So yeah, you're right about that. The freelance market has become really robust and has really allowed this kind of thing.
First of all, it's just been wonderful to have you on. And oh, the other thing I'm going to say and share,
Mhm.
and you guys did this with me. It's like reach out. Hey, I have questions. Can you introduce me to this person? Can you help with here? And what I will say, and I was really taken by you guys because of all those companies and that start, so many of them do not ask for help. They think they got it. And the fact that you're able to reach out and ask and be vulnerable, I think that that is like an incredible gift that the two of you have that I think will really serve you very well as your company continues to soar. So I want to say thank you for reminding me about that, and thank you. And I really hope that other people who are thinking about taking that first step, like listen to this and and if that's one thing you take away, just know that these guys have done that and continue to do that. And it's okay to not know what you're doing. It's okay to figure it out while you're building the airplane. It's okay to be building the airplane while you're taking off. All these things are okay, but just know like they're reaching out to their friends, best friends in the industry to help them on nights and weekends. Like everyone once you take that step, people want to see you succeed. And the more you can share about that and where you need help and like help us get to this North Star of where we want to go, like it really only serves you. So don't be embarrassed. Don't be shy. Ask. So Vanessa and Erica, I just want to say thank you so much for being out here, reaching out, and just being you. And I wish you like the most amazing success. So thank you.
You're welcome, Jan Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you for having us on. This is really fun.
I know this is a lot of fun.
Like again, this is why we do this every week. It's because of you. You guys keep listening and downloading. And I haven't started really in earnest doing the whole social media push to like grow the audience because there really hasn't been a need to. And I appreciate that so incredibly much. And you guys are all so supportive, and the feedback I get from every single channel is great. So don't forget to like and subscribe. And also, we have a newsletter. I'll put it in the show notes, but sign up. I force subscribe all of my guests. Everyone else is optional. So Vanessa and Erica, you will be forced subscribed. But if you're not into newsletters, you can always unsubscribe. It's not that big of a deal. I just want to take the learnings that I get from guests like you and share them with everyone. There's too much good content.
We already get them.
Oh, good. Then I already forced subscribed you when we decided to do it. Good. So good.
Yes. Yes.
But again, the reason why I did it is because I just get to learn so much from you. And then after doing this, it'll be 3 years and next month. There's 160 episodes and so much learning and so rich that we can just that I want to share and like repurpose to help everyone out there shorten their journey. So thank you all for listening and tuning in, and like, subscribe, spread the word. I love evangelizing and having great guests on like Vanessa and Erica. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.